Imagine looking at a massive global institution that, right on the surface, looks like four totally completely different, almost contradictory organizations. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to unpack a pretty fascinating paradox. We're exploring the Anglican Church, and specifically, we're diving into the unity behind these incredibly diverse traditions. We're going to see exactly how this giant, unique mosaic actually fits together.
Because think about it. How do such wildly different styles of worship even coexist under one roof? Like, you could walk into one parish and you're instantly hit with the heavy sense of ancient incense and the beautiful sound of chanted liturgy. But then you go down the street and you might hear a modern rock band just blasting at top volume. Walk into a third, you might see a minister wearing a plain black gown, delivering a fiery hour-long sermon. It honestly seems impossible that these are all expressions of the exact same faith, right? And yet, they absolutely are.
So let's start with part one, high and low traditions and what we call the whip pan contrast.
To really grasp the unity behind these diverse traditions, we've got to first appreciate just how stark this contrast is. Over on one side, you've got this sensory-rich, sacramental style focused heavily on the Eucharist. And then on the flip side, you've got an austere, stripped-down simplicity that focuses almost entirely on the spoken word. Let's zoom in on that high church side for a second. This is known as Anglo-Catholicism. And this style puts the Eucharist, the communion meal, at the absolute center of the whole service. It is a highly sensory experience. I'm talking ringing bells, burning incense, and priests wearing these elaborate, historically rich vestments like chasubles. The service itself is usually sung or chanted. And one super interesting detail, the priest often faces the altar, leading the congregation toward God in a tradition that literally stretches all the way back to the original apostles. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking this is just some ancient European concept perfectly trapped in amber. Not at all. This highly reverent, deeply historical style is absolutely thriving today on a global scale. If you were to travel to major African cities, places like Cape Town, Nairobi, or Freetown, you'd find Anglo-Catholic parishes beautifully preserving this formal, historical style of worship right now.
Okay, so then we swing over to the complete opposite approach, the low church or evangelical tradition. Over here, the visuals are intentionally stripped way back. That ornate altar, gone. Replaced by a simple wooden table. The fancy vestments, swapped out for just a plain black gown or a simple cassock. Instead of ancient chants, you're singing traditional hymns. And the Eucharist actually takes a back seat here to the main event, which is preaching the Bible with absolute fire. The emphasis is entirely on personal conversion, driven by really long, powerful sermons. And you know, just like the high church, this uncluttered, passionately preached tradition is also expanding rapidly. Across nations like Nigeria, Rwanda, and Kenya, this direct style is drawing massive numbers of people to the faith. The gospel is just preached with this intense passion through a totally direct, no-frill style of worship.
So, looking at these two extremes, the ornate, incense-filled high church and the raw, preaching-focused low church, it begs a pretty obvious question. How in the world are they part of the exact same organization without just splitting into completely different denominations? What is the hidden unity behind these incredibly diverse traditions?
Well, that brings us to part two, the middle and the spirit, focusing on peacemakers and modern movements. We do things decently and in order, but we don't fight about it. Honestly, that quote perfectly captures the vibe of what's called the broad church. The broad church sits squarely in the middle and essentially acts as the pragmatic peacemaker between those high and low traditions. They don't want the extreme austerity of the low church, but they also really aren't looking for the intense ritualism of the high church. They just want a balanced, orderly service.
By using moderate vestments and standard prayer books without making too much of a fuss, this balanced style seamlessly bridges the gap. They make sure to include both Bible reading and Holy Communion in their services, perfectly splitting the difference. It's the ultimate compromise, really, a unifying, middle-of-the-road approach. And because of that, it's actually the default style in countless English parish churches, as well as in major African cathedrals today.
All right, now let's inject a highly dynamic element into this mix, the charismatic Anglicans. This group is all about spontaneity and the power of the Holy Spirit. If you step into a charismatic Anglican service, you're going to see hands raised in worship, full bands rocking out with drums and keyboards, and people actively praying for healing and prophecy. But here's the truly fascinating part about them. They can mix and match. You could easily find a high church charismatic service with those fancy vestments and spontaneous prophecy, or a low church charismatic service that's just totally free and unstructured.
And if you want to see where the future energy of the church is heading, look right here.
This movement is exploding across Kenya, Uganda, and Ghana. It's this brilliant fusion of historic Anglican architecture with high-voltage, localized worship. It creates a deeply engaging, modern expression of faith that is literally drawing in massive crowds.
Which leads us nicely to part 3, the ties that bind. Let's look at the foundations of unity. So with all this wild variety, how does the center actually hold? Well, Anglicans will tell you that their unity isn't found in aesthetic style at all. It's anchored in 4 non-negotiable pillars. Number 1, confessing the exact same faith through the historic creeds. Number 2, reading from the same Bible. 3, following the historic episcopate, which just means they're led by a continuous, unbroken line of bishops. And 4, using a shared liturgy derived from the English Reformation. As long as a parish holds fast to those 4 foundational pillars, it doesn't matter if they use heavy incense, an electric rock band, or a plain black gown. They are truly and fully Anglican.
And that brings us to part 4. One strange, wonderful family. The unified mosaic.
You see, every single one of these traditions brings a unique and vital strength to the table. Think about it. The high churchman loves beauty and preserves ancient tradition. The low churchman loves simplicity and champions the raw power of the preached word. The broad churchman loves unity, ensuring things are done decently and in order. And the charismatic? They love the Spirit's power, injecting this vital energy into the church. None of them are wrong. They're just emphasizing different essential aspects of the exact same faith. By holding fiercely to their core foundations, the creeds, the Bible, the bishops, and the prayer book, the Anglo-Catholic who loves ancient ways and the modern charismatic who loves spontaneous worship manage to form one unified global family. It's a family that spans continents, from England to Nigeria, from Freetown to Uganda. And they're bound together not by how they look on a Sunday morning, but by the deep structural roots they fiercely share underneath it all. So I want to leave you with this final thought. In a world that often demands total conformity, how might embracing extreme surface-level differences while fiercely protecting a few shared foundational truths actually forge a stronger, more resilient global community? It's a fascinating model of unity in diversity, and it's definitely something worth considering, whether you're looking at a global church, a massive multinational corporation, or just society itself.